our followers and viewers, fellow lifelong learners, I open this launch of Akda, the Asian Journal of Literature, Culture, and Performance, conceptualized and managed by the Department of Literature, College of Liberal Arts, De La Salle University, Manila, with pride and joy. A triumph amid setbacks, turns and twists, and with the pandemic, how we have honed our capacity to be flexible and to be more creative, imaginative, resourceful, and ingenious. Thus, this issue, and more to come, our own way of making space. This determination to extend, reach out, and have a gathering of minds with you, that in our communal grief, our individual and collective empowerment to create. Akda. The Department of Literature, home of outstanding, award-winning, prolific, and socially engaged educators, artists, writers, researchers, and scholars, and a consistent awardee is the most productive in research in humanities and education in the annual Research and Excellence Awards of the university, endeavors to provide platforms to discuss and exchange ideas on how we can better understand and manage the changes that are happening today in and beyond the domains of the humanities, the confluence of connected knowledges, and the decentering of the landscape of knowledge for broader access and heightened influence and impact. Our radical hope. We would like to thank our contributors, peer reviewers, our editors, the college and the university, and you, our dear readers, and future contributors and collaborators. Enjoy the issue and have a lovely day.
Good day to everyone. I am Dina Roma of De La Salle University, Manila, and Editor-in-Chief of Akda, the Asian Journal of Literature, Culture, and Performance that we are happily launching today. There are so many things I'd like to say about the journey of Akda, but given the very brief time allowed, I would just like to say that the time we spent on reviving and migrating Akda from an independent domain onto the DLSU Publishing House website has indeed given it a new life. We are aware how publishing university journals is a competitive pursuit, but we are confident that the unique features of Akda would encourage both established and emerging scholars, researchers, and artists from different parts of the world to turn in their works. We are keen on expanding the conversation on Asia through areas of inquiries that are witnessing a growing interest. We are grateful to the contributors of this issue for entrusting their works to us. They form a rather cohesive set of scholarly papers that gives our readers a glimpse of our future releases. Many thanks as well to those who have supported us along the way: Dr. Raymond Tan, Dr. Hanairo, Dr. David Bayo, and Ms. Joanne Castañares. We would also like to thank our Chair of the Department of Literature, Dr. Genevieve Asenjo, and to our external reviewers for their time and patience. And of course, to our very own editorial team, Dr. Piocos, Dr. Arogo, and Dr. Arguelles, without whose diligence this issue would not have been possible. Maraming salamat po, and I do hope that this issue is a satisfying one to all of you.
Akda, the Asian Journal of Literature, Culture, Performance, demonstrate our commitment to publish articles that will inaugurate new and dynamic directions for scholarly inquiry on the literary, cultural, and performance production in the Asian region with our second issue. Our Volume 1, Number 2 issue offers a range of manuscripts that cover literary, cultural, and performance studies that intersect with inquiries on disability and faith studies, speech modernities and pedagogy, critical race studies, film and documentary studies, photography and screen studies, and curation studies. I am proud to introduce our authors for this issue. Our first author, Nestle Carol Tan, is a PhD candidate of English and Theatre Studies at the University of Melbourne. with funding assistance from the Melbourne's Research Scholarship and the Faculty of Arts Dean's PhD International Scholarship. Her current PhD research project focuses on disability performances in various cultural locations in the Philippines. Her article, Trila in Manila, Troubling Theatricality and Uneasy Spectator Affects Surrounding the Ringside Bar Midget Boxing and Wrestling, illustrates how performance and affect inform disability politics in the case of Filipino little people, wrestlers, and boxers at the Ringside Bar along a red light district in Makati City, Philippines. The archive of her study focuses on the reception of its primarily foreign visitors as manifested online, including the bar's unofficial Facebook account, review-based websites, and travel and expatriate vlogs where reviews of these attractions most actively circulate. First, she maps out the troubling theatricality of midget wrestling and boxing, identifying their cast, choreographies, and designs to reveal traces of freak show traditions. Then, she unpacks the uneasy affects of the activated spectators generated by the performances. In her article, she argues that amidst the facade of intense crazy action promoting these attractions, there are palpable cracks of apprehension that expose guilty tensions of complicity with these ableist attitudes and at the same time reveal embarrassed resistance against a perceived tourist scam. Her article discussed the implications of these precarious performances and confused affects on disability politics, specifically on the already tenuous relationship between exploitation and agency among the little people in the Philippines, which will be of great interest for scholars of performance studies, disability studies, and affect studies in Southeast Asia. Our next author, Oscar Tantoco Cirquiñas Jr., is a PhD candidate in theater studies at the University of Melbourne, where he is working on a dissertation that explores sites of speech study, training, and performance in the Philippines from 20th to 21st centuries. He is also a faculty member in the Department of Speech Communication and Theater Arts at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. His essays have appeared in Theater Research International, Humanities Diliman, Kritika Kultura, Kasarinlan, the Philippine Political Science Journal, and the Philippine Humanities Review. His article, Institutionally Speaking, Speech Departments and the Making of a Philippine Eloquent Modernity, initiates a historiographical account of speech departments in the University of the Philippines and Silliman University. Founded in 1959 and 1965, respectively, these academic formations are the two existing bastions for the comprehensive and disciplinary study and practice of speech and speech communication in the country and the rest of Asia. His essay explores the use of speech as the organizing principle of scholarly inquiry in the modern Philippine university, the pedagogies composing Philippine speech curricula, the performances enacted by speech programs in the University of the Philippines and Silliman University, the speaking subjects that speech departments seek to develop, and finally, the relationship of these institutions to what may be termed as an eloquent modernity. The article's pertinent questions concerning the nature and the future of the discipline of speech and speech communication in a post-colonial nation like the Philippines will be of great interest for scholars of post-colonial studies, speech and rhetoric and pedagogy, historiography, and institutional studies. Our next four authors will introduce their work to us, but allow me to introduce them here first. Eric Kong Ai Chun is an assistant professor in the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences of City University of Macau. His research interests include Asian American literary studies, theater and performance studies, and cultural studies. His recent publications include Performing Refugees' Body and Memory, Poetics of Diaspora in Li Thi Diem Thu's Auto Performance in Rupkatha Journal, and COVID Karma in Macau in CUNY Forum. Katrina Macapagal completed her PhD in Film and Media Studies from Queen Margaret University, Edinburgh. Her book, Slum Imaginaries and Spatial Justice in Philippine Cinema, is published by Edinburgh University Press and is out in the press right now. She previously worked as instructor at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and produced stories for Probe, the longest-running news magazine television show in the Philippines. She is now based in Edinburgh and works in charity communications and research. Rosa Cordillera A. Castillo is an anthropologist and engaged scholar based at Humboldt University in Berlin in the Institute for Asian and African Studies. She works on peace and conflict studies with a particular focus on violence and subjectivity, othering, moral and ethical self-formation, affect and emotions, resistance and solidarity in national and transnational contexts. She is also interested in and writes on the anthropology of Islam, state and religion, decoloniality, critical research ethics, and engaged scholarship. And finally, Anne Frances N. Sangil is a full-time faculty member at the De La Salle University Department of Literature. She is a member of the Popular Culture Association and was the Writing Fellow for Film Studies for the Benvenido and Santos Creative Writing Center of the university. She served as the assistant editor for the film volume of the CCP Encyclopedia of Philippine Arts, and Sangil's most recent work, King's Cross, Harry Potter and the Transformative Power of Pain and Suffering, is part of the book Cultural Politics in Harry Potter, Life, Death, and the Politics of Fear, published by Routledge in 2020. These four scholars have worked on questions of multiculturalism in Asian American drama, discourses of sound in documentary films, ethics of case in photographs of state violence, and notions of authorship in film adaptations. Here are the authors who will introduce their own work. Please download, read, and share their works by visiting our journal's website, www.dlsu.edu.ph/journals/Akda. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Eric Kong Yu Chun. I'm an assistant professor from the City University of Macau. My paper title is A Sick Way of Thinking, the Unorthodox Dramaturgy of Yang Jingli's Identity Politics Theater. The paper aims to explore Yang Jingli's identity politics theater as a counter-ideological project that responds to neoliberal multiculturalism. In the paper, I address a predicament of what I refer as racial contingency in Asian American theater and how such conception draws critical attention to the naturalizing of neoliberal multiculturalism. The paper particularly explores Lee's unorthodox dramaturgy as a critical aesthetic embodied in her plays, including her latest Broadway success, Straight White Man. It's a play actually expresses, quoting her own line, a sick way of thinking that can be rendered as both a symptom and a critique of racial contingency. By demonstrating the ways in which racial subjects have become racially contingent in Asian American theater, the paper argues that Yang Jingli's identity politics theater generates from, while also responding to, the rhetoric of neoliberal multiculturalism. In the article, I refer to Jody Malamit's concept of neoliberal multiculturalism, which speaks in line with the transformation of Asian American cultural production. But instead of embracing neoliberal multiculturalism, I try to bring up the critical awareness in which racial awareness could be easily sugar-coated by the rhetoric such as colorblindness and post-racial aesthetic. Also, in the process of reading various waves of Asian American theatrical representations, as well as Yang Jingli's identity politics plays, I attempt to theorize racial contingency as a dual critical frame. On the one hand, it describes a propensity in which racial subjects under neoliberalism are moving from racially marked to becoming contingently marked or even unmarked in terms of staging or performing racial subject matters on stage. On the other hand, it is also proposed to serve as a critical frame to explore the very symptomatic condition that is arguably adhered with the problematic dynamics of neoliberal multiculturalism. To explore Lee's unorthodox dramaturgy in Straight White Man, the paper reached her Broadway success in terms of a mixed blessing, which is a paradox in which the timely political retaliation towards the subject of straight white man category could be deconstructed and rendered in the very self-critical terms of being trapped with one's own hypocrisy. So if you would like to find out more about how Yang-Jin Lee conceived her unorthodox dramaturgy, you're welcome to read the paper for more. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Katrine Makapagal, and I hold a PhD in Film and Media Studies from Queen Margaret University in Edinburgh. My paper, The Haunting Power of Sound in Aswang, examines the use and interplay of sounds, or what can be called audibility, in Alex Arumpak's 2019 documentary, Aswang, which is the first feature-length documentary that tackles Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs. My paper focuses specifically on the documentary's oral potency, which I contrast with the audibility of terror created by Duterte's regime. After all, the spate of extrajudicial killings, or tokhang operations, under Duterte has effectively configured the sound of knocking as a sound of terror. I locate the Aswang documentary against this audibility of terror created by the Duterte regime, accentuated by the primary metaphor of the Aswang legend, where the documentary initially draws its political charge. Inspired by theories of sound and haptic listening, I argue that Aswang, through its composition of key sound elements such as the voiceover, music, and urban noise, configures an overall audibility that amplifies, rather than reduces, the humanity of the documentary subjects. Aswang is able to harness documentary sound to realize the genre's potential to fashion a politics of listening that conveys compassionate and humane portrayals of its subjects. I would also invite you to read my abridged interview with composer Teresa Barroso, which is included in this paper's appendix, to gain a bit more insight on Aswang's scoring. I sincerely hope this article, which to my knowledge is the first academic journal article on Arumpak's Aswang documentary, inspires further research in Philippine documentary studies. Thank you for listening.
Hi everyone, I'm Rosa Cordillera Castillo, an anthropologist based at the Institute for Asian and African Studies at Humboldt University in Berlin. Amid Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte's drug war, the continuously climbing death toll, and the proliferation of photographs of the war on drugs by photojournalists who have been pushing back against this policy, what is the role and responsibility of the spectators of these images? In my paper, A Politics and Ethics of Viewing Photographs of Duterte's Drug War, towards reconceptualizing the political community, I propose a framework for a politics and ethics of viewing photographs of atrocities and suffering through an analysis of photographs of Duterte's war on drugs and responses to these images. I situate this politics and ethics of viewing in a context of violent othering and Ariela Azulai's conceptualization of regime-made disaster. This framework is grounded in fellow feeling and imagined identification, as well as on the relationality, powers of mourning, and ethical responsibility that Judith Butler asserts, and is operationalized through the civil contract of photography called forth by Azulai. Following Azulai and Butler, I direct this politics and ethics of viewing photographs towards reimagining citizenship and reconceptualizing the political community. I hope that this article will be of interest not only to academics, but also to photojournalists, journalists, activists, artists, and ordinary citizens. Thank you very much, Akda, for giving space for my paper.
I have always idolized Mike De Leon. I remember watching one of his earlier films back when I was 8 years old, and it was Kakabakabakaba. While I did not completely understand what was going on in the story, I remember being greatly amused by it, especially with the dancing and the singing nuns. Little did I know that that was to be the beginning of my fascination, my enduring interest with the filmmaker. De Leon has always been regarded by people as an uncompromising artist, an obsessive compulsive filmmaker, a legend. And I've always wondered, and to quote Antonio Salieri in that classic Milos Forman film Amadeus, is talent, is genius like that written on the face, or is it written somewhere else? It's written in his body of work naturally. So this essay, Lost in Adaptation, Anti-Fidelity, and in Mike De Leon's Bilanggo sa Dilim and Bayaning Third World, is part of my search for the Mike De Leon signature, particularly in his film adaptations of existing materials, namely Bilanggo sa Dilim, liberally adapted from the novel The Collector by John Fowles, and Bayaning Third World, De Leon's take on national hero Jose Rizal, a historiographic adaptation, if you will. Following the tenets of auteur criticism, this essay looks at how De Leon's artistic style has become the ordering agent for the unarguably collaborative medium of this art form. It puts under the lens De Leon's signature and confronts the difficulty of assigning authorship and originality not just within a collaborative and institutionalized medium, but also one that aims to adapt for the screen a literary and historical material. De Leon has his own way of reclaiming an adapted work and a historical figure, and by wrestling Bilanggo sa Dilim away from the pages of the novel, and by being unfaithful and transgressive in adapting for the screen the hero Jose Rizal in Bayaning Third World, Mike De Leon creates a space for himself and his signature in his creative transmediations.
It is my pleasure to greet and congratulate Akda, the Asian Journal of Literature, Culture, Performance, for its continued success and for the launch of its new website. Here's to more meaningfully transdisciplinal and liberative content in all the future issues of this very important and cutting-edge academic publication. Props to the staff and the technical team, and hearty congratulations to the Literature Department of the De La Salle University for persevering in this wonderful, creative, and scholarly initiative.
A pleasant day to everyone. It brings me great joy to congratulate the editors and staff of Akda, the Asian Journal of Literature, Culture, and Performance, for the launching of the journal website and the publication of a new issue. I am likewise pleased to formally welcome Akda to our portfolio of journals, wherein we are excited of what lies ahead for our newest journal. The DLSU Publishing House reaffirms our commitment in supporting the journal to become a premier platform of scholarly exchange in these exciting fields of study. Akda joins the roster of DLSU journals that are making an impact in their respective disciplines, such as the Springer published The Asia Pacific Education Researcher, the Q2 ranked and Scopus indexed Asia Pacific Social Science Review, Scopus indexed the LSU Business and Economics Review, which is one of the leading business journals in the Asian region, the Manila Journal of Science, which is now being evaluated for admission by the ASEAN Citation Index, and the Malay, which is one of the most read Filipino journals, and the application-oriented Journal of Computational Innovations and Engineering Applications. Together, Akda and the press office will strive to sustain this momentum, wherein hopefully in the next few years, Akda will be soon indexed in a scholarly database. Congratulations once again, and we look forward in the publication of more issues. Thank you.
It's an honor and a privilege to welcome everyone to the launching of Akda, the Asian Journal of Literature, Culture, Performance, Volume 1, Issue Number 2. I recognize the reality that it is too difficult a task to give birth to a new journal that is envisioned to fill up a lacuna in journal publications solely dedicated to the arts, literature, and the humanities. There are only a few that we can consider as top-notch or top-tier journals that cover the breadth and depth of literary, cultural, and performance studies, not to mention the geographic scope that is Asian in context, in character, and identity, which Akda is poised to position itself strategically. The Akda Journal is headed by no less than our distinguished colleague and university fellow Dr. Dina Roma as editor-in-chief, together with Dr. Carlos Piocos, Dr. Misandel Arguelles, and Dr. Antoinette Arogo as managing editors, with an impressive lineup of editorial board members. By far, I know for sure that Akda will come a long way from this day onwards. It is my dream and hope that we commit ourselves to sustain this journal the way mothers and fathers nurture and take care of their newborn child. Let it grow, mature, and shape its own future worthy of its name and reason for being. For our guests today and for future contributors to this journal, we welcome you to be part of this journey. Let writing flourish, and let us not perish in this world without doing our part to convey the power of our very own imagination and words. I wish you all for the success of this journal, and congratulations to all who have made Akda Journal a reality. Thank you, and a pleasant day to all.